I recently went to go see Thor, Love and Thunder, the fourth film in the Thor series of movies and the latest installment in the long line of Marvel films. My longtime followers are well aware that I'm a bit of a diehard MCU fan, and out of all the mainstream nerd stuff we got now, I've chosen that to kind of be my thing. I try to see them all in the theaters, and for the most part I like what I see. I've been pretty hyped for the latest Thor since I loved Ragnarok, and was sold at the cool hard rock inspired logo. It was surprising to me when I heard people weren't really digging this one, but I can say after watching it that I thought it was fine. Thor, Love and Thunder is far from the worst movie in the Marvel canon, but it's certainly not up to the standards set by some of their heavy hitters. The character of Thor is the one that has suffered the most loss out of anyone in the entire MCU, and almost ironically, his movies have gotten sillier over time and take themselves a lot less seriously. Honestly, I like that though. These movies are fun and should be fun. I watch movies like this to see some crazy, fantastical stuff, have a good time, get hyped about comic book references with all the other nerds, and just enjoy where this massive universe could go next. When things do get serious and or legitimately good from a film standpoint, it's certainly welcome and awesome when it happens, but it's not always the point. In the case of entertainment, I would say that this movie has done its job. In my opinion, the worst thing a movie can do is be boring, and I just wasn't bored. This movie was very fun and got a bunch of audible laughs from me. The comedy landed a lot more than a lot of the other quip-filled Marvel fare. I was also impressed with some of the action scenes. My favorite Marvel movies in the recent years have all been the cosmic ones. They always allow for a unique setting filled with creative visuals and vibrant colors. For the most part, the Earth-based ones are typically dull with desaturated colors. Things seem so much more alive when it comes to the Guardians movies or Ragnarok, and it's a lot more appealing to me. Thor 4 delivers on this with several new locations that just look gorgeous, all populated with their own unique life forms and set pieces. I really love the world where it turns out all of the gods are real, and they inhabit this one city-type planet ruled by Zeus, who is hilarious by the way. I must say that it's kind of funny that according to Marvel, all the gods are actually real, except for Jesus. The world that was entirely in black and white was another highlight and one of the more unique things that I've seen from Marvel. Speaking of the black and white world, I must say that Christian Bale does a great job as Gore the God Butcher. Now, I didn't know this character before the movie, so I'm only judging based on the film, and with a name like Gore the God Butcher, you would expect him to be pretty badass, and I certainly found him to be enough of a threat in the film through his performance and accompanying visuals. I loved the makeup on him, and there were some great moments with the lighting when he emerges from the shadows, and his face looks just like a skull for a moment before he reveals himself. It happens a few times during the film, and it's a striking visual. I found him to be one of the better villains in the MCU Rogues Gallery, and I appreciate the trend lately of villains getting a lot more depth and motivation, rather than seeming more like the villain of the week from a Saturday morning cartoon. Other members of the cast do a fine job as well. I already mentioned that Russell Crowe's Zeus is hilarious, and Natalie Portman is surprisingly a huge step up from her previous appearances. You can tell that she's having a lot more fun this time and actually wants to be there. Chris Hemsworth continues to do a good job of being Thor as well, and I feel like he's doing a perfect job portraying the character the best he can with the way the MCU has decided to treat him. His character development makes a lot of sense to me. Now, I really would like to mention the movie's soundtrack. Earlier I mentioned the movie's badass, hard rock style logo, which led me to believe that like the previous Thor movie and the cosmic Marvel movies so far, there would be an emphasis on 70s and 80s rock tracks in the soundtrack. I may be a bit biased, as that's my personal favorite bubble of music, but for some reason I always find the use of these soundtracks to work out extremely well and add to the movies. That being said, Love and Thunder is certainly no James Gunn movie and isn't packed with a lot of variety in the soundtrack. I actually found it very strange the amount of attention Guns N' Roses was given in this movie. Not one, not two, but 4 songs by Guns N' Roses were featured out of the 10 licensed songs in the film. That's almost half the soundtrack, 3 of which are even from the same album, Appetite for Destruction. It's also strange that Heimdall's son, who was a major plot point in the movie, decided to call himself Axel after the band's singer, prominently sports a Guns N' Roses shirt, and decorates his room with posters for the band. I found out that the band is a favorite of director Taika Waititi, but it still seems a bit heavy to lean on the band. It's so much that once you notice it, it seems like too much and feels unfitting. It's a Thor movie, not a Guns N' Roses music video. The title art for the film, as well as the stylized portion of the end credits, would leave one to believe that the soundtrack would be a hard rock love letter, but it seems to lean so heavily on Guns N' Roses that it almost seems mismatched. The variety of other artists used leads me to suggest that the movie could have been better with a lot more different tracks like Guardians of the Galaxy uses, or just going all out and using a soundtrack pretty much entirely of Guns N' Roses like how Iron Man 2 was almost a whole AC/DC album. Instead, the uneven numbers of different tracks versus ones by the same artist just sort of feels weird and noticeable. Anyway, I genuinely enjoyed Thor Love and Thunder. I found it to be fun and entertaining, with some cool visuals and badass action scenes. Christian Bale does a great job, and clearly a lot of love was put into this film. I must admit that I'm a pretty big fan of Taika Waititi, and I'm convinced he has the Midas touch where everything he's involved with is gold. That being said, while I enjoyed it, it definitely was an upper mid-tier Marvel movie and does not surpass Ragnarok, and unless you're a big Marvel fan like me, there's no real reason to go see it. I liked it, but it's really only worth a watch if you're a Marvel fan. If you don't care about this franchise, don't lose sleep over missing out on this one.